In our white paper that will be published later this year, we talk about the future of wealth operations. In our podcast today, I'm joined by Rich Sherwood. Welcome, Rich. To talk specifically around tech and how that is looking to evolve in terms of supporting wealth operations. So I think it's fair to say that we're all used to lots of the acronyms and jargon from mainstream media around tech, but sometimes don't necessarily understand how that will apply to us in the future within the wealth industry. So we're going to touch on that now. So getting back to basics, Rich, let's start by demystifying a few of those acronyms. So RPAs, APIs, what's the difference?
Good question. So let's start off by explaining what they are. So an RPA is a robotic process automation, and an API is an application programming interface. I'm sure that's the answer anyway. So they both serve a similar purpose, but they're very different tools when it comes to how they're deployed. So an RPA tool is quite an agile way of automating a process. If you think of it as a robot sat in a seat, it will have access to a system, it will have login details, that sort of thing, and that robot can replace a human in terms of processing something, but it will still need access to each system. It's not integration, it's more just as simple as a robot replacing a human, effectively. The API side is a bit different. So what that is two systems talking to each other via an API. And that can be something as simple as sending data. It could be something like requesting data. It's a proper integration point between two systems. It's removing that middle step of transposing that data around. And that is what normally in the industry you would deem as proper integration, is when you have that sort of secure, managed API feed, if you will, in both directions. They both got their benefits. Like I said, RPA can be deployed quite quickly. It's relatively cheap in comparison to APIs. However, APIs are probably a bit more strategic in their in both time it takes to deploy them, because they can take quite a while depending on the system they're built on. Some systems aren't compatible with APIs, and that's where you get into your legacy data and that sort of thing. But it's probably a overall better way to do something, just takes a lot longer to do.
So I guess these are things that are being used in anger across the industry already, and I guess a lot of that's been from a cost angle, but there's also a kind of risk management angle with this stuff as well, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I say with an RPA tool, you'll have similar risks to a human in terms of you're still taking data out of one system, put it in another, albeit the transposing of that data will be accurate because it's done by a robot. But the fact you're still leaving one system and going into another, there's your main risk. APIs sort of eliminate that because it is a direct link. You're not going out to a third party, if you will, whether it be a human, be a robot, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm also thinking around some of the sort of controls environment stuff as well. So actually bringing that consistency and taking out that manual effort can allow people to focus on the sort of value add elements.
Yeah, exactly that. And like you just said there, if you had APIs feeding in this data, it would, that person who was sat there transposing something from an online form into the admin system can actually be there monitoring that feed and highlighting, a real world case. Let's look at something like a pet. They could be there looking at that sort of at-risk person or whatever it might be. They have that time now to do a proper investigation, as where currently they're just too busy processing the massive applications they might be receiving.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks, Rich. So looking forward further then, so the metaverse is mentioned in the white paper. I've only ever seen this around gaming, my son playing endless games of Fortnite at home and so on. How can that translate to an operational team benefiting from it?
Yeah, so, and you're right, currently a metaverse, whenever someone talks about it, it's an entertainment platform, it's a social platform, that sort of thing. Where it can be deployed and where it's starting to already be seen in sort of an operational space is a sort of like a meta office where people will, they'd be at home, much like we are working now, we'll be at home, but you sort of enter into the Meta office, and how you do that currently will be mostly via a laptop, but in the future it could be like a VR headset, that sort of thing. And what that enables is a couple of things. So the training element, so if you could get everyone, regardless of their location, into a room to conduct a bit of piece of training, a webinar or whatever for your company, perfect. That's the perfect place to do it. You can be in the metaverse, you can look around the room, you can see your colleagues, you be more engaged with the trainer. But even in the day-to-day sort of operational business, if you will, you could have a Meta office where people are sat around a bank of desks, and you can have that sort of overhearing conversations that you get in the office, and that sort of collaboration that you get now, that can be replicated in the metaverse. I'm not saying it's going to replace it, it won't ever be a direct replacement, but it's a really good tool that will enable businesses to be together when they're physically not, and that really sort of frees up from a workforce point of view who can be doing that work and where they need to be. It's sort of a bit of a game changer, really.
I think it's quite hard for a lot of people to kind of imagine what that could look and feel like. I think one of the main challenges is that lack of empathy and human interaction. But actually, I read just this week around one company looking at using VR to better understand their customers, so looking at different vulnerabilities and how they can really understand those vulnerabilities through the use of VR. So I think actually there is a more human aspect to it as well as the more sort of traditional collaboration.
Yeah, definitely. And giving the ability of your customer service agents, for example, to put them into a position to really understand their customer base. You can put them into any scenario in their training world, and it sort of really gives them that link to the customer. Because currently, typically they might not have that experience in their own life already, so it's hard for them to sort of relate to how that customer's feeling. However, if you give them a training scenario that does that, at least let them sort of draw upon it. Even if it is a VR-based experience, it's still better than not having it. And I think it's on that journey that it would help a lot.
So how far away are we from this becoming a reality day to day, do you think?
So the metaverse is here. It's how we currently engage with it is what's going to need to change. So as I said, metaverse is here. You can engage with it via your laptop, mobile phone, all that sort of stuff. Where it really comes into its own is when you go down the VR route. And obviously currently we're talking about these sort of big headsets you put on. Once you put that on, you're very closed off from anyone you're physically with, which can be a bit unsettling and all that sort of thing. So I think that tech needs to come quite a way, to be honest, until we go down the route of, we can put a computer in a pair of glasses, for example. That's the sort of level of tech we need to get to. But that's very much the hardware side. The software side, like I say, the actual metaverse is already there, and there's nothing stopping companies from engaging with it, albeit not with VR, now and in the next sort of couple of years.
Thanks, Rich. So I think one of the things that we read about day in, day out is AI, and the pros and cons potentially to that. So let's talk about regulations. FCA have recently commented on big tech and AI. How do you think that will impact innovation across the industry?
AI is obviously really big at the moment, and I think it's only going to get bigger. And I think the FCA are being really good here in terms of committing to this safe space to give companies the ability to go in there and play around with it.
This is called the sandbox, is that right?
The sandbox, yeah, that's it. Because it effectively is just a place where companies can go and test the different ideas they might have in a secure way. Because the last thing that the FCA or anyone wants is for a company to release a bit of AI onto their client base that hasn't been fully tested or fully understood, and you start to get real world impacts. So the fact that the FCA has already come out with this and committed to this sandbox and said that they are sort of behind firms and tech firms as well, because this sort of stretches further than just your typical wealth firm. We're going into the world of sort of the bigger tech stuff now, so they need to be monitored, if you will. And it's great the FCA committed to doing that, and they're sort of giving people the tools to do it. So I think it should really help sort of drive some innovation in the area. We just need people to start doing it, really.
Thanks, Rich. Please look out for our white paper later this year, and we've also got an exciting event coming up in October. Loads of really interesting speakers, so we can get into a bit more detail on these subjects as well. We'd love to see some of you there. Okay, thank you for joining us, and thank you again, Rich, for your insight.
Thank you.
See you again soon.